Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about reading a ruler. Now this one that you see on the screen right now is not technically called a ruler. This tool is called a scale because as you rotate it, it has 6 different sides to it which allow you to read a drawing or take measurements at different scales. The one we're going to focus on goes from 0 to 12, and you'll notice a little 16 up here. This is your standard English ruler measurement right here from 0 to 12, and the 16 tells you that we are reading the ruler to the nearest 16th of an inch. Now, we're not just going to go ahead and jump right in and start measuring things and expect you to just learn it right off the bat. What we're going to do is take this measurement from 0 to 1 and figure out what all these tick marks mean so you can accurately read your ruler to the nearest 16th of an inch. So let's go ahead and do that. So on a piece of paper, I've gone ahead and I've broken down the ruler from 0 to 1 inch. Now you'll notice that I added quotation marks after the number 1. Those indicate inches. So when you see quotations after the number, that's telling you that the measurement was done in inches. Alright, so now that you know that, the first thing that I want you to know is that when you're looking at a ruler, everything's typically being cut in half. So from the 0 to 1 inch, the first thing we're going to do is cut this right in half, and we're going to leave left with how many parts? 1, 2. So 1 half plus 2 halves gives me 1. I want you to pay attention to the color that I'm using, as well as the length of the line. So I'm going to go right down the middle of this thing. So notice how long that green line is. It's going to be the longest one in between the 0 and the 1. The longest line there is right down the middle. And that one is our half-inch mark. So 1 half plus 2 halves gives me an inch. Next one we're going to do is going to be an orange. And we're going to take this portion, cut that in half, take this portion and cut that in half and see what we're left with. Pay attention to the length of these orange lines. Notice they are just a little bit shorter than your half inch. So just a little bit shorter. And what are we left with? How many spaces? 1, 2, 3, 4. So these orange lines are going to indicate our quarters or 1/4. So this one is a quarter right here, 1/4. So 1/4. Now 2 quarters can be reduced, so that's why that's the 1 half. 3 quarters. And then 4 quarters gives me the 1 inch. Now let's take a step further and let's break these down in half. So if I cut this in half, pay attention again to the length of the line. Go a little bit longer there. Right, and these brown lines are going to represent what? How many spaces am I left with now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Eighths. So these brown lines represent eighths. So this first one is 1/8. So 1/8. 2/8 can be reduced to a quarter. 3/8. 4/8 can be reduced to a half. 5/8. 6/8 can be reduced to 3/4. 7/8. And then 8/8 gives me my 1 inch. Alright? Again, those are just a little bit shorter than the quarters. The smallest tick mark that you're going to see between the 0 and the 1 are these. So we're going to break everything in half again. Right there. 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 And there. How many spaces are we left with now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So the blue lines represent 16ths. 1/16. Sorry, my handwriting got a little bit weird there. 1/16, 2/16 can be reduced to an eighth. 3/16, 4/16 can be reduced. 5/16, 6/16 can be reduced. 7/16, 8/16 can be reduced. 9/16, 10/16 can be reduced. 11/16, 12/16 can be reduced. 13/16, 14/16 can be reduced. 15/16, and all the way to 16/16, which gives us our inch. So that's what all of those tick marks are. Just keep on breaking things in half. Now, let's talk about some rules. Rule number 1. Know what tick mark you land on. Can you do that? Well, if you know the lengths of the lines, the smallest lines are 16ths, next are eighths, third are quarters, and the biggest line is a half. If you can identify what type of line you're on, then you could start figuring out where you're at on the ruler. Rule number 2. Even numbers in the numerator means you have to reduce. You need to reduce. What do I mean by that? If you counted and figured out that you landed somewhere and you counted it as 2/4, that's the answer that you came up with. There's an even number in the numerator. If you ever see an even number in the numerator, then you must reduce. So what does that reduce to? How many times does 2 go into 4? 2. How many times does 2 go into 2? 1. So that equals 1/2. So if you ever have an even number in the numerator, then you know that you did not reduce, or maybe you didn't recognize what type of tick mark you actually landed on. So if you end up with an even number in the numerator, make sure you reduce. Now, let's talk about how to count these. So blue, remember, we're 16ths. Brown, we said we're eighths. Orange, we said we're quarters. And green, we said was a half. So if you don't have the colors, pretend you don't have the colors. Remember, 16ths are the smallest, eighths are the next biggest, orange are the third biggest, green is the largest. So by recognizing the length of the tick mark, you can identify what you're landing on. Is it a 16th? Is it an eighth? Is it a quarter? Or is it a half? Now, remember, there are 16 sixteenths in an inch. So if you know you land on a 16th, you're going to count every tick mark. But what if you land on an eighth? An eighth, if you notice, is every 2 tick marks. 1, 2, 1/8. 1, 2, 2/8, but that can be reduced. 1, 2, 3/8. 1, 2, 4/8. 1, 2, 5/8. 1, 2, 6/8. 1, 2, 7/8. 1, 2, 8/8. So an eighth is every 2 tick marks, right? An orange is every 4 tick marks. And a half, which you shouldn't ever have to count because it's just right in the middle and it's the longest, but it's every 8 tick marks, right? So being able to identify what you're landing on is key. If I land on the smallest one, I'm going to count every tick mark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sixteenths. If I land on an eighth, which is the second longest, I'm going to count every 2 tick marks. 1, 2, 1/8, 1, 2, 2/8, 1, 2, 3/8, 1, 2, 4/8, 1, 2, 5/8. If I land on the second longest line in here is a quarter, like right here, I'm going to count every 4 tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3/4. Right? If you know what type of tick mark you land on, you can use that technique to quickly get your measurement. But some people mess up and they think that, ooh, I landed on a 16th, but it's really an eighth. So let's pretend like we did that. So they start counting every tick mark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 sixteenths. But the problem is there's an even number in the numerator. 10 is even. So 10 sixteenths can actually be reduced to 5/8. So that's how you can catch your mistake with rule number 2. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your quick down and dirty basics on how to read a ruler breaking down the inch. Thank you.